Okay, so for today's review, I've got Sattler and Waldorf from the Muppets to help me because I feel like they'd have similar opinions to me about this series. Uh, this is the third book in the Lightlark series, Skyshade. I have actually read all three and I do regret it. There's a lot said about these. They've been really big on TikTok, the authors had a lot of criticism for their writing style, and to be honest, the first book is actually really terribly written, and she doesn't develop much throughout. There's a lot of use of like strange kind of metaphors and things like that, like the sun is described as a yolky looking object. Some of that goes over the time. What it follows is a young girl who gets drawn into this like centennial kind of competition to try and save the island of Lightlark. She's a ruler of one of the kind of tribes of people that live on there that all have special curses and abilities, although she has no power. So she ends up at this competition with all these leaders with all these fabulous powers, and she thinks she has none. And this follows through the series. So she discovers in the first one that she has quite a lot of power, and she kind of forms relationships with the leader of the island of Lightlark, the Sun King, and a very stupidly named person who's leader of the night kind of section of the tribes called Grimshaw. I always want to call him Grimdark. And then the things that really infuriate me about this kind of happen in book 2 and book 3. So Grim is like your kind of edgy, dark, kind of romantic interest in this series. However, he goes a bit beyond being an edgy, dark, romantic interest into just being a bit of a psychopath. And in the second book, he kind of starts an entire war just because she's left him and he wants to get her back. And carries on much like that. He will kill random people just because they've irritated him in the series. And she makes the person, there are spoilers in this by the way for the series, but I wouldn't recommend reading them, so I don't think it matters. She in the second book goes off with a grim guy after being with a person who is much nicer and better for her, and I think that's a really terrible message to give. These are arguably marketed as YA, and I think it's a terrible message to give anybody that your love interest should be the guy who's like basically a psychopath, and really sort of only wants you because you've decided to leave him. Again, I bought the third one because I was kind of hoping that she would realise that was a bad idea and redeem it, and she doesn't. She just doubles down on the fact that this girl just really likes this guy who's a monster. My other main issues with it is that there's like no personality of any of the characters. There's no peril in any way whatsoever because the author just gives the girl a new power or a new magical MacGuffin to help her every time there is any kind of threat to anything. There's no foreshadowing of anything that happens, and it does feel like it just kind of copies other things that are popular at the time. So Fourth Wing has risen to like major popularity recently, and there's a dragon in this book all of a sudden when there hasn't been dragons in any of the previous 2 books, and we don't know anything about dragons existing before this, but evidently we need to now have dragons in all fantasy books that you can ride. So we suddenly get one in this. There's quite a lot of sex that happens, which is written as badly as the rest of the things, and again doesn't feel appropriate for something that is marketed as YA. Like you buy this in the YA section of the bookstore, and it has a lot of sex in for something that's marketed as YA. There's so many problems with the characterization and things of this, but I think the thing that I really, really want to sort of give as my main kind of review of this is that it's so wrong in how it presents these relationships. And I really think like the message that it gives of, you know, hey girls, it's kind of cool to marry the guy who wants to just kill random people because they annoy him, is such a terrible message to give that I'm actually offended by the author and what they've done. I would have lived with the terrible writing and lack of like plot and foreshadowing, and just carried on reading these as like a book that I love to hate. But I am actually at the point where I'm dramatically offended with the author for the same messages that she's putting in these books and giving across to people who, if you actually agreed with the fact that this audience is YA, is not the audience that should be being given these messages. Luckily, I think, hopefully, not many people are reading it because it's actually terrible. So getting to this point where you discover these things probably hasn't happened to that many people with any luck. But yeah, definitely going with Sattler and Waldorf's opinions of everything. The best bit about this book is that it ends.